Welcome in to Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. It feels like Christmas Eve, doesn't it? The night before the 2023 NFL Draft, where we will find out the number of players the Seahawks will be adding to their roster for 2023. They have 10 draft picks. Could they be trading some of those picks? What is exactly going to go down? It all starts Thursday night, and we cannot wait for you. On today's show, I have my final Seahawks mock draft to bring you. We'll dive into it here in just one moment. Before we do, want to know, who is your dream draft target for the Seahawks? Whether it's with that number 5 pick, maybe it's somebody in the 4th or 5th round. Tell me who your dream target is for the Seattle Seahawks, who you'd like to see in a Seahawks uniform in 2023. So for our final mock draft, we're going to stay consistent to what we've been doing throughout all these mock drafts that we've done here on Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. We put the picks through the Pro Football Focus simulator, where the simulator makes the picks for the other 31 teams. And then I step in and I predict what I think's going to happen for Seattle, the picks that they will make. And so we'll go through the picks, analyze them, show you some statistics coming up in a moment. Before we do, let's run through the draft picks of what Seattle has. We mentioned the 2 first-round picks at 5 and 20. Then they have 2 second-round picks at 37 and 52. So 4 picks in the top 52. Pretty solid there. Then they're on the board again at 83 in the 3rd round. And then the back half of the draft, we see them pick at 123, 2 picks in the 5th round, 151 and 154. And then they wrap up the draft at 198 and 237. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The mock draft begins with the first 4 picks. Bryce Young to Carolina. The Texans, even with all the smoke going on, still end up going with C.J. Stroud at quarterback with the number 2 overall selection. Will Anderson goes to Arizona at 3, and Will Levis falls to the Indianapolis Colts at number 4. So who is the best available players at 5 for Seattle? Well, Jalen Carter still around, who Mel Kiper Jr. believes is the best player in this entire draft. There's Anthony Richardson from Florida. We know the Seahawks have liked Anthony Richardson, had some great meetings with him back at the draft. Tyree Wilson, who we've heard the Seahawks feel really good about and has certainly gauged a lot of interest in, is still around. And then a couple other more notable names when it comes to just best available. Bijan Robinson, one of the best players in this draft, but a running back would be shocked if Seattle picked that high at 5. Devin Witherspoon, the best corner in this draft, still around at this point. He's expected to go top 10. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, with the 5th pick of the 2023 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Jalen Carter, defensive tackle, University of Georgia. I got to tell you, to me, I know that we've heard things about, the Seahawks might go quarterback with Stroud or Richardson, or that, you know what, maybe the meeting didn't go so great with Jalen Carter. Maybe they're leaning towards Tyree Wilson, whatever. I think there's a lot of smoke going on right now, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Jalen Carter, we've talked about for weeks on end, has seemed like the natural fit for the Seattle Seahawks with the number 5 pick. And I know that there's been some things that have stacked up the last couple of months. But at the end of the day, you can't ignore the talent. I think for Seattle here, you make the move that you can't just pass on a guy like this that's sitting right in your lap. To me, it makes too much sense for Seattle to go with Jalen Carter here at 5. So that's the pick. We'll break it down here in just a second. Before we do, what do you think? Should the Seahawks draft Jalen Carter at 5? That's our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break. If so, take advantage of it. Type Y for yes. Type N for no. Let me know what you think. Should the Seahawks draft Jalen Carter at 5 or not? Tell me what you think. Chat Sports, we are your draft headquarters. Going to be live on draft night, not only here on Seahawks Day, but also our main NFL channel, as we'll be live for all 7 rounds, beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central Time, and 3 p.m. Pacific. You can watch it on YouTube, and it is going to be fantastic. I'll be on there from time to time, as well as the rest of our Chat Sports crew. You will not want to miss it. We're not doing the interviews or anything like that. We're going to break down every single pick in real time. Don't miss it. NFL Draft live on Chat Sports beginning Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. The breakdown on Jalen Carter. Now, here's a guy that, according to Mel, as we told you, is the number one player in this draft, overall and defensive tackle. A unanimous All-American, a first-team All-SEC selection in 2022, and a two-time national champion with the Georgia Bulldogs. And the numbers, you may be saying to yourself, well, didn't a guy like Will Anderson have better numbers than him? Well, you can't. What doesn't take into account, what the numbers don't tell you, is all the double teams that Jalen Carter took on throughout the season. And even with all those double teams he took on, he still managed 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 7 tackles for loss, and 32 tackles. The tape is outstanding when it comes to Jalen Carter. Here's the breakdown from The Athletic on what Jalen Carter brings to the table. Needs to continue growing in areas, but his block destruction is special because of combination of control, quickness, and power. Presents a conundrum in NFL. He's young, and maturation isn't a guarantee, but he's arguably the most talented prospect in the draft with potential to develop into a top 5 player at his position in the NFL. So we got more picks to get to in the first round. Let's continue. Let's go to the 20th selection. And the last 4 picks before the Seahawks pick here, Dalton Kincaid goes to the Commanders. Joey Porter Jr. goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, following in his dad's footsteps. Miles Murphy goes to the Detroit Lions. He was a potential target for the Seahawks. He's off the board. Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee, goes to the Bucs. There at 19. So this is what leaves us here at 20 of some of the best players available for Seattle. You have Lukas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Iowa. Brian Branch, who can play safety and corner out of Alabama. Then there's Kalijah Cansey, the defensive lineman from Pitt. You could go receiver. Zay Flowers is still on the board, although Jackson Smith and Jigba is gone by now. And then there's Brian Bresee, the defensive lineman from Clemson, also available as well. You could double up on those interior defensive linemen there with the pick you made on Jalen Carter. With that said, though, I got to go Lukas Van Ness. To me, this is very good value with Lukas Van Ness still sitting around at the number 20 selection. And there are folks out there that are writing off Lukas Van Ness simply because he wasn't a starter at Iowa. And the more I read into this, folks, that's not that big of an issue. He was playing in a system under Kurt Ferentz at Iowa that gave a lot of favoritism towards upperclassmen. And although Lukas Van Ness was a second-team All-Big Ten performer and was clearly the best player on that defense, he still was not getting his dues by his own coaching staff. I would not put the mistakes made by his coaching staff as a knock against him, okay? Everything still speaks for itself of how talented this guy is, and so young, too. A redshirt sophomore, wow. To me, that would be a hell of a pick for Seattle if they can find him at 20. More on Van Ness here in a second. Before we do, should Seattle draft Van Ness at 20? Type D for draft, type P for pass. Let me know what you think. If Seattle should take Lukas Van Ness, if he's available at this spot, D for draft, P for pass. Mel Kiper has him as the number 27 overall player, the number 3 edge rusher on his big board. We mentioned second-team All-Big Ten performer in 2022 and a freshman All-American in 2021. And we mentioned, as young as he is, only playing 2 years of college football, he put up incredible numbers for also being a guy that was a rotational piece that didn't start. 13 sacks in 26 games, 19 tackles for loss, 70 tackles and 1 pass breakup. Lukas Van Ness, folks, is just getting started. More from The Athletic on Lukas Van Ness. Van Ness needs coached up with his pass rush construction and overall pacing, but he's an ascending player and competes like a grizzly bear. With his fierce power and explosive twitch, he has the upside of an impactful NFL starter with inside-outside versatility, regardless of scheme. So, pretty good on Lukas Van Ness. Let's go ahead and roll through the rest of the picks now. And for my guy Nicholas Newton, who's probably watching right now, he'll be very happy to see this. Seattle, I have getting John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota at 37 overall. He was still on the board. I couldn't pass up on him. And I know that you signed Evan Brown this offseason, but I got good news for you, folks. Brown can play center or guard. So you could start Michael Schmitz at center and Brown at guard. And, I mean, you're talking about a guy, John Michael Schmitz, the numbers are outstanding. According to PFF, an overall grade of 92. Pass block grade of 81. Run block grade of 92.4. Allowed just 2 sacks. And we've seen as of late, the centers have been pretty good that have been heading towards the draft with Tyler Linderbaum, Creed Humphrey and company. John Michael Schmitz, I think, belongs in those class of centers. This would be a home run pick for Seattle if he's still around there at 37. Then at 52, we take care of another need. This time at linebacker. Trenton Simpson is the pick here. And, I mean, he might look snazzy with that bow tie you saw there, but the play on the football field is pretty good too. 72 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. And we get one of the best linebackers in this draft with our second-round pick here at 52. To me, that is a win for Seattle to take care of an area of need there and do so with not one of your 1, 2, or 3 picks. Still some good value there. Get Trenton Simpson at this spot. More picks to get to here in a bit, but I want to know, what's the Seahawks' biggest need in this draft? So far, we've done a pretty good job of taking care of needs at the defensive tackle spot, at edge rusher, at the linebacker position. We still got some more stuff to get to. We took care of the center position. What is the biggest need for Seattle? Tell me in the comments section what you think that is. Moving forward now to the 83rd selection. That's where we find Oklahoma wide receiver Marvin Mims, who I got to tell you, I'm very high on Marvin Mims. He reminds me of Elijah Moore. And you look at this Seattle Seahawks team, you already have a really dynamic 1-2 punch in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but you need a number 3 receiver. And personally, I've kind of given up on D. Eskridge at this point in time. The guy can't stay healthy. Why not Marvin Mims? A guy that's bringing in over 20 yards of reception, a deep threat. He's fast. He's got speed, good hands, over 1,000 yards receiving, 6 touchdowns. And remember, the quarterback play at Oklahoma this year was very inconsistent with Dylan Gabriel not looking great at times with the injuries at the quarterback position. Watch out. Marvin Mims could be a natural fit for the Seahawks as that number 3 receiver and maybe even one day be an eventual replacement for Tyler Lockett there. Then we find a running back in the 4th round. Need a running mate for Kenneth Walker because he can't do everything, right? In today's NFL, you have to have multiple backs. That's where we find Dwayne McBride. He had 3 straight years of overall grades, according to PFF, of over 89. And the guy, he wins with his feet. You're looking at somebody that's a true 2-down back. To me, that's a good complementary piece. He does need to work on his receiving game in the backfield, but I think the Seahawks coaching staff can work through those things. But so far, for a 4th-round pick, I think this is a good value find for Seattle to be your number 2 running back. Then we go to the 5th round. That is where we find the Seahawks going with another offensive lineman in the interior. That is Sidy Sow from Eastern Michigan, a 5th-round selection at 151. Solid in run blocking and in gap grades, according to PFF. And one thing that stood out to me, just looking at the numbers from Sow, his best game in 2022 was against his toughest competition and the Arizona State Sun Devils. That was his strongest performance. And going up against the big hog mollies of Arizona State, for him to step up in the biggest game against his toughest competition, that says a lot for me about Sidy Sow potentially. So that could be a good value pick for Seattle there at 151. Still more picks to get to in a second. Before we do, join us tomorrow night for our live coverage of the first round of the draft. We will get going about 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, about an hour before the draft starts. I'll be here. Big Tex will be here. We're going to have a heck of a time. We're going to break down all the picks as they happen, get you instant reaction to what Seattle does at 5 and 20. You will not want to miss it. Our live draft coverage here on Chat Sports coming up. It will be a heck of a time as we'll be bringing you coverage and having a great time and super chatting away and just enjoying ourselves. Subscribe to the channel for free. Turn on notifications so you make sure and join us coming up on Thursday night. Now, as we wrap up the draft, let's stay in the Pacific Northwest now. That's where we find Oregon State corner Rajon Wright with this selection at 154. Solid grades for coverage and completion percentage. He allowed less than 48% of passes to be completed. So not bad for a guy that we're finding on day 3 late in the draft there. Then we go to the 6th round, and we go best available with this pick. And that's where we find safety Quindell Johnson from Memphis at 198 overall. Fantastic in run defense. He had not 1, not 2, but 3 straight seasons of an overall grade, according to PFF, above 76. So he was very consistent in the last 3 seasons there, so pretty solid on that front. Our final pick of the draft, we're going quarterback. We're going to leave this draft without a quarterback. That's where we find Max Duggan. And Max Duggan, I think, can be a career backup in the National Football League. And if the San Francisco 49ers taught us anything last year, is that you need to look at multiple quarterback options. Because what happened to San Francisco? They had a great offensive line, and yet their number 1 quarterback, Trey Lance, went down. We also saw Jimmy G go down. Brock Purdy, last pick of the draft, ended up taking them to the NFC Championship game. Max Duggan's got a lot of work to do to be an NFL quarterback. But he's a winner. He's a great locker room guy. He's very athletic. To me, I'm willing to take a chance on him as a 7th-round pick to be my number 3 quarterback in case something happened to Geno or Drew Lock, whatever it may be. Why not? To me, Max Duggan, I think that'd be a win for Seattle if they were to do so there. So, to recap the Seahawks mock draft, we go Carter, Van Ness, Schmitz, Simpson, and Mims with our first 5 picks. Then we wrap up the second half of the draft with McBride, Sow, Wright, Johnson, and Duggan. To me, that's a win. It's a home run draft, if I would say so myself. How would I grade my draft? A+. Give me those A+'s in the chat. Tell me what your grade would be for how I did with this final Seahawks mock draft. Personally, I think I knocked it out of the park, if I'd say so myself. Let me know in the comment section. Grade it for me how you think my final Seahawks mock draft was. Hit me up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Tyler Jones Live. Talking all about your Seahawks there as we get you ready for the draft. I'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great one. And join us next time here on Seahawks Today.